Hi everyone, I am your teacher, Chimerler15, and today we are going to learn about conditionals in English. So, before we start, can anyone tell me what a conditional is, or what they are?
I don't know.
Can I respond?
Yes, go ahead.
It is related to if and to if situations.
You're saying it's what again?
I said it is related to if conditions and conditions.
Yes, that's correct. So, essentially what he's saying is that conditionals are essentially sentences that tell us what happens when something else happens. And they take the form of if X, then Y. And I'm typing in the class's chat channel, so there we go. So it takes that form. If X, then Y. So in this case, X would be the condition, and Y would be the result. And you could actually move the order of the clauses around, but you'd have to take off the comma. So you could also have a sentence like Y if X.
Sorry, you are not recording.
Huh?
You are not recording.
No, I'm
It's
recording
a
this.
screen.
I'm recording this lesson.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. Um, okay, so as I said, you could also change the order of the clauses, but you'd have to take off the comma and the word then. So you could have Y if X, and it'd be the same thing. Y is the result, and X is the condition. Okay, so um, let's go ahead and talk about the types of conditionals. Can anyone tell me how many conditionals there are in the English language?
Before
4? Yes, that's correct, 4. So we have the zero conditional. Oops. Yeah, the zero conditional, the first conditional, the second conditional, and the third conditional. So we're going to talk about these one at a time. So we'll start with the zero conditional, which is, of course, the easiest conditional to use. So before I start talking about the zero conditional, does anyone have any questions so far?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you don't? Okay. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started with the zero conditional. Oh, did someone want to say something? Okay, well, no, you didn't miss anything. I was just talking about the forms of conditionals, Blue Phoenix. Um, we just started. Okay, so let's talk about the zero conditional. The zero conditional talks about things that are always true. So, so we use this for things that are always true. So, for example, if you mix, actually, before we do that, I need to talk about the form. Each conditional has certain forms. So with the zero conditional, it takes the form of if present simple indicative, then if present simple indicative, then future simple. So this is the form I'm sorry, no, not future simple. It should be present simple. I made a mistake there. Okay, so if present simple indicative, then present simple indicative. There should be another indicative right there. Okay, there we go. So for example, if you mix salt and water, you get salt water. This is an example because it's always true. This is what we do with the zero conditional. We talk about things that will always happen. That it's always true, it's always going to happen, and there's not a single instance where it's not going to happen. So here, if you mix salt and water, you get salt water. And mix would be the present simple indicative for the first clause, and get would be the present simple indicative for the second clause. So again, with the zero conditional, if present simple indicative, then present simple indicative. Oh, sorry. Hold on one moment. Okay, so sorry about that. So that's the difference between, that's the basic form of the zero conditional. So before I continue to the onto the first conditional, does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, so if not, let's go ahead and talk about the first conditional. So we use the first conditional to talk about things that are very likely to happen, that are strongly possible. Not necessarily true, just strongly possible. So this conditional has the form of if present simple indicative, then future simple. So that's the form of the first conditional. Okay. So, one moment. Okay. So, an example for this would be if I fail the test, then my parents will get mad at me. So that's an example. So here we have fail as the present simple indicative and will get as the future simple.
Can someone please mute themselves? Thank you.
Yeah, someone is being too loud and I can hear an echo. I don't know how do I mute? Oh, okay. Well, there we go. I muted him. Okay, we're cool now. Let me just. Great. Now I have to go and type. That's okay. I'll just put this. I'll edit this message up here. Okay.
Is there Is there a text channel with all this?
Yeah, it's the class's chat channel. Can you access it?
Just classes info is all I have. That's okay. It's no big deal.
Oh,
You have
okay.
to
No big deal.
self-assign the
What
role.
room? Look, please.
The
What room?
classes. Oh, here, let me change the text permissions. Okay, you guys should be able to access it now. Can you access it now?
Yep, I can. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
awesome.
I didn't find it. I didn't find it.
Hello, what's happening here?
It should be under classes info in the English classes section.
This is an English class, yeah?
No, someone's saying that they can't access the classes chat
No,
text chat.
my question is, if this is an English class, who's the teacher?
I am.
Yeah? No, seriously?
Mhm.
Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah, you have the role of a teacher.
Yes.
So, what are you teaching today?
Conditionals.
Okay,
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Mhm. Okay. So what was I? Oh yeah, I was talking about the first conditional. So with the first conditional, sorry about that. Okay, so with the first conditional, we have, again, we have something that is, we use it for things that are strongly possible or strongly likely to happen. But they don't necessarily have to be true, but they usually are true. So I can think of another example. So another example here would be,
Wait, so it's gonna happen?
yes, it's likely, it's
It
very
it
likely to happen.
okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
If you if you drop, how about this? If you drop your phone in the water, it
uh-huh.
will get ruined. So that's another example. And
Can't
somebody,
can't we use might?
yeah, you can use might.
Okay.
So, um, yes, people have posted a few examples here. So, with my example, here, like it could, your phone could very well get ruined, but like we don't know for sure, but it's strongly possible. It's very likely to happen. So that's why we use the first conditional.
Holy shit, man. Mute yourself.
I think he's gone now, so we shouldn't have an issue. I don't know what that was though. Yeah, please, if you guys are making too much noise, please mute yourselves. Okay. So, okay, awesome. So that's the first conditional. So now let's talk about, well, before we continue, can you guys, in the chat, you can type up some examples of zero conditionals and first conditionals. So let's do zero conditionals. Can you guys think of some examples of zero conditionals? And if you can't, go ahead and type in the chat. Or you could just say it out loud. Either one.
Okay, I have an example that just happened.
If you heat ice, it melts. Yeah, that's a very good example.
If I eat, I get fat.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I
that
wanted
works
to
too.
say.
If you buy something, then you will have less money afterwards. Well, that's the first conditional. So, like, right now I want you to
If I
think of it.
eat, I die.
Um, um, I mean,
Depends on what you eat.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just giving an example
Okay. And let's see.
because I know how it works, but I didn't have like a real idea.
If you stand in the rain, you get wet. Yeah, very true. If you study hard, you'll get better. Oh, that's the first conditional. But I get your points anyway. Yeah, like you could just type up an example of a zero conditional or a first conditional. If I study, then I will pass the exam. Yeah, that's a first conditional. If I study lots, I will be smart. Another first conditional.
Well, which chat are we using? I don't see it. Sorry.
Sorry, what?
Which chat are we using?
The classes chat. If you watch TV, your brain is fried. That's funny, but that works. If I learn English, now I'll be fluent. Yeah, that's a first conditional. Yeah, you guys are getting this. Yeah. Good examples of zero and first conditionals. If you eat grass, you're a cow. That could work. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. If I go, I will be there. Yes. Why don't we use would? You can, but it's not common to. We typically reserve would for the second conditional, and which I'll talk about in a moment. If I put food in the microwave, it will get hot. Yes, that's the first conditional. Yeah, all very good examples. Depends if you turn the microwave on, true. If you forget to turn on the microwave, the food won't get hot. Yep. If you don't have internet, you can't use Discord. Yep. And I forgot to mention, you can use modal verbs in this manner. Like, in this case, someone used can't. I mean, you could do that too, and as well as don't. So that technically works too, regarding the zero conditional. If you run, you sweat. Yep, very good. Okay, so I guess that's enough examples for now. If you're already typing an example, go ahead, but I'll just go ahead and start talking about the second conditional. But before I talk about the second conditional, I need to hold on, move that a bit. I need to review the subjunctive mood. So, can anyone tell me what the subjunctive mood does in English? Okay, well, the subjunctive mood is essentially a mood that tells us. Here, let me type it up. The subjunctive deals with wishes and hypotheticals. So, situations that aren't true.
Hello.
Hello. And the indicative deals with facts and certainty. Situations that are true or believed to be true. So that's the difference between the two moods. Oh, look at you, Freddie. You already posted an example of the second conditional, but there's just one problem with the second clause. Like, I think you meant to, like, the second clause isn't grammatical, but I do see what you're trying to. Yeah, it should be I would do this. Yeah, I see what you meant. Okay, so now that we know what the subjunctive mood is, how it relates to the second conditional. Well, actually, before we do that, I need to talk about the past subjunctive, because in the second and third conditionals, we use the past subjunctive, or the past simple subjunctive, and the past perfect subjunctive, or the pluperfect subjunctive. So there are two past subjunctive forms. We have the past simple subjunctive and the past perfect subjunctive. Let's talk about the first one. So the past simple subjunctive takes the same form as the past simple indicative in English in most instances. So let's say that here, past simple indicative versus past simple subjunctive.
How are you from it?
Huh?
How you from?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're asking.
How you from? How are you?
I think he said, "Where are you from?"
Oh, I'm from the United States of America, Texas to be more specific.
All right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you for explaining that to me.
Okay.
Okay,
You speaking fluently English. Very good.
Sikerim amına koyayım Joker'im.
Türk var mı lan? İbine ver.
Eğer ben Joker değilsem tüm dünya alem beni siksin. Amına koyayım Joker benim sikerim seni Yasin ha beni sikme.
okay, so to continue, so
Joker'im.
so
Eğer
to
Joker değilsem dünya alem beni siksin.
okay.
Amına
Guys, do
koyayım
you
Joker
know?
benim sikerim.
I will I will bring the moderator in here if you do not stop disturbing the class.
No, we'll not stop fucking that. Just seize it.
How does the system of muting work?
Dude,
Don't
it's
worry,
not
I
that
just
hard. Click on someone's profile and mute them. Just
No,
I
I
know
mean in
that's
this
stop getting
channel.
introduction for that.
I know. I don't worry. I just muted them, so don't worry. Okay. So going back to what I was talking about, let's disambiguate the past simple indicative from the past simple subjunctive. So in English, as I said, there are these two forms are mostly the same. So danced in the indicative would be danced in the subjunctive. Fought in the indicative would be fought in the subjunctive. Worked would be the same in both. You get the idea. But there's one exception, and that's the verb to be. So it's was versus were. So here, this is the only time when we have a difference between the past simple indicative and the past simple subjunctive. Now, in the past simple indicative, you conjugate for person. I was, you were, he was, etc. But in the past simple subjunctive, everyone gets were. So I were, you were, he were, etc. So it's like that.
Teacher, why don't you have any stream?
Why don't I what?
Stream.
You mean a stream?
Yeah.
Oh, I could, but I don't really want to do that. I just record and then post it on my YouTube channel.
Kaç santim?
Huh? Okay, well, anyway, were is the only distinct past subjunctive. Can you send your YouTube channel? I'll do it, but after this lesson. Just remind me after this lesson. Okay, so were is, but basically were is the only distinct past subjunctive, past simple subjunctive, I should say, in English. So remember that. Were is the only distinct one. Everything else is the same. But I should also point out that the usage of were as a subjunctive differs from dialect to dialect. In American English, we strongly prefer were as a subjunctive. But in British English, they tend to prefer was instead of were, unless the verb conjugates for were. So like, if it's you, then they would use were and not was. So in British English, they would say if I was to do this instead of if I were to do this, like in American English. So depending on the dialect, the usage of were as a subjunctive differs. But this isn't absolute. There are some Americans who would use was for the subjunctive, and some Brits who would use were for the subjunctive. So it really just depends. But that's the trend you see. but grammatically it's now acceptable to use was as a subjunctive instead of were. I don't recommend doing it, and you'll see why later, but you can.
Ya yapmaz sikerim ben ha yavşak.
Okay, so can you give an example? Yes. So that's where the second conditional comes in. So in the second conditional, you have the form of if I, oh no, I'm typing up an example. If past simple subjunctive, then conditional simple. And regarding the conditional simple, I'll explain that in a bit. So that's the form of the second conditional. If past simple subjunctive, then conditional simple. And by conditional simple, I mean the use of the verb would. So like would do, would sing, would drink. That's the conditional simple. So the second conditional talks about imaginary situations in the present.
I would go for a jog.
That's the usage of the conditional simple. I get what you mean, but that's the usage of the conditional simple. So for the second conditional, you'd have to include another clause in the past simple subjunctive.
Joking.
So the second conditional talks about imaginary or hypothetical situations in the present. So an example would be, if I were you, I
I
wouldn't
would
do
go
that.
to Japan.
Or I'd go to Japan. However, whatever example you want to bring up. So that's an example. So here we have were as the past simple subjunctive and would as the conditional, not conditional present, conditional simple. Oh, not would, sorry. It should be would, wouldn't do. And yeah, as someone else said, you could say both of those sentences. So you could say, if I were sick, I would need to go to the doctor. And you could also say, if I weren't sick, I'd go to the party. You could say weren't either way. Now, to some people, it would be weird to use weren't like that because the subjunctive it's not used in English that much nowadays, but it's not wrong. You can say either one.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So another example would be no. The first conditional is not the same thing as the second conditional. The first conditional talks about things that are strongly possible or highly likely. The second conditional talks about things that are
Hi. Hi guys. Does anyone hear him?
Yeah.
Me? Hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry about that. My mic just sometimes does that. I don't know why.
It's okay.
Okay, so, but yeah, as I said, the second conditional talks about imaginary situations in the present, and someone posted an example here. If I were rich, I would do that. So that's one example. And again, you can just switch the order of the clauses around. So you could say, I
Hello.
wouldn't do that if, hello, I wouldn't do that if I were you. You could also do it like that. So you could just move the order of the clauses around, as long as you remove the comma. But no, you can't put the comma in there like that. You need to take out the comma. Okay, so that's the second conditional. Okay, yeah, perfect. Now your sentence is perfect. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the third conditional, which is similar to the second conditional, but instead of a present hypothetical situation, you have a past hypothetical situation.
Teacher.
I'm sorry,
Who is
what?
teaching?
I am.
What does though means?
Oh, Camacho. I know him. There is a guy who has a red condom.
Go buy a
I'm not a
dictionary.
red condom. No.
Okay, I'm trying to teach. Okay, sorry about that.
Hey guys, please be quiet. He's
Yeah.
trying to teach.
Yes. Yeah,
Please.
exactly. Please, just
Why
stop.
does he speak Spanish here?
Can I know one thing, please?
Yes, what is it?
I need to know what is this lesson about.
Huh?
I need to know what is this lesson about. I just entered the now.
Oh, it's about conditionals.
Conditionals?
Yeah, conditional sentences in English.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Okay, so now we're going to talk about third conditionals. The third conditional. So the third conditional has the form of, well, first I should talk about what the third conditional does. The third conditional is used for, it's used for hypothetical situations in the past. So instead of the second, which is hypothetical situations in the present, the third conditional is used for hypothetical situations in the past. So it takes the form of, okay, let me just put it all on one line. Can you do a Google Docs to summarize and share it after? Yeah, I can do that. Okay, so if past perfect subjunctive, then conditional perfect. So this is the, and someone just posted a good example of it. If you had studied harder, you would have passed the exams. But here's the third conditional. If past perfect subjunctive, then conditional perfect. So first I need to talk about what the past perfect subjunctive is. It's like the past simple subjunctive, but instead you have the auxiliary verb had. So here, let me contrast this with past perfect indicative. So past perfect indicative versus past perfect subjunctive. So let's say had done would just be had done. Had failed would just be had failed, and had worked would just be had worked. So in English, they're the same form, and they're all the same. Every single form is the same. The past perfect indicative looks just like the past perfect subjunctive, but the difference here is that even though they're the same in form, the difference is that the past perfect subjunctive talks about hypothetical situations in the past, and the past perfect indicative, well, that's just about past perfect events, that actually happened. So they take the same form, but there's another important distinction. So let's take someone's example earlier. Let's take Rian's example. If you had studied, oh, this lesson is about conditionals, But anyway, if you had studied harder, you would have passed the exams. Oh, that's not how you say. That's not how I say your name. I'm sorry. Okay, but anyway, here we have had studied as the past perfect subjunctive, and would have passed as the conditional perfect. And I should mention the conditional perfect too. The conditional perfect is just would have and then a verb. That's it. So the conditional simple is would and a verb. The conditional perfect is would have and a verb. So that's the difference. Yeah, and as someone else said, you can invert past perfect. Oh, here, let me finish what I'm typing first. So in this example, had studied is the past perfect subjunctive, and would have passed is the conditional perfect. Okay, so as someone else said earlier, you can invert past perfect subjunctives. So you can make the sentence look like this. Had you studied harder, you would have passed the exams. You could do it that way too. So past perfect subjunctives can be inverted. And hold on, sorry guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I said, past perfect subjunctives can be inverted, but past perfect indicatives cannot be inverted. So that's another main difference between the two. You can invert past perfect subjunctives, but not past perfect indicatives. So that's something to keep in mind. So let me provide an example that further illustrates this. So let me give you the following context. So person A says this, person B says this, and let me go ahead and boldface this and this. So consider the following context. Person A says, I bet he had left the house by the time we came home. And person B says, but if he had left the house, his car wouldn't be here. This is what we have here, a past perfect indicative, not a past perfect subjunctive. And I know this because if you invert the past perfect in the second sentence, you would make it sound counterfactual. But that's not really what you want to do, because the indicative is used for situations that are true or believed to be true. So here we're talking about a reality that's assumed to be true. So here this is not a past perfect subjunctive, but a past perfect indicative. So you cannot invert the had left in the second sentence. So that's the difference here to keep in mind. So again, past perfect subjunctives can be inverted, but not past perfect indicatives. Okay. Okay, so now that we talked about the second and third conditionals, can you guys think of some examples? Oh yeah, that's correct. You could also say it like that, Robinson. That's correct. But you need to
Sorry
take out
to
the
interrupt
comma.
the flow, but in person A is indicative, but person B is subjunctive.
No, they're both indicative.
Because it's had he left the house, his car wouldn't be there.
No, yeah, see, that's what I was trying to say earlier. Like, if you invert it, you're going to make it sound counterfactual. But here, we're not making it sound counterfactual. Because we're... Huh?
Because if you say, if he had left, you're talking about a situation in which he left, but you don't believe to be true. Because you're saying his car is here, but it wouldn't be there were it that he hadn't left.
You're close. So, see, here... And actually, here, let me provide another example that further illustrates what I'm talking about.
Not being pickety, it's just like that sentence might confuse people if they're trying to work out the difference.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. So let me provide another example, but without the perfect form. So it's just going to be a past simple indicative this time. If he was here last night, then... So in this example, okay, so here I have another example. Person A says, I think he was here last night. But person B says, if he was here last night, then we would have seen him. So this is an indicative, not a subjunctive. And it's indicative because we're operating under the assumption that someone was there last night. So we're considering that as a true situation. So it's not counterfactual, if that makes sense. So you don't use were in this case, you would use was. Because you're contesting somebody's assertion that someone was here last night, if that makes sense. So it's the same in the previous example. It's not really a subjunctive, it's an indicative.
The thing is, then we would have seen him is in the subjunctive. And so that causes a mood clash. Like you can't have connected clauses in different moods.
No, you can.
It's illegal in English. So I think it should be if he were. But now I think in order to have if he was in the first part of the clause, then you have to, in the second part, have something in the like the present indicative. It can't have in it. I think an example because nobody ever uses this.
Could you provide
if he was here, then how come there is no evidence? That's in the indicative.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
But if he were here last night, then we would have seen him as suggesting that we are talking about a hypothetical situation in which he was there.
Yes, but instead of were, it would be had been, because it needs to be a past hypothetical. So you would say, if he had been here last night, or had he been here last night, then we would have seen him.
Subjunctive.
Yeah. So the difference
but were
here
last night is subjunctive too.
Yes, but I should also point out that, I'll get into this later, but I should also point out that you can't use were to refer to past hypotheticals, only present hypotheticals. So it should be had been.
Were he here is past.
Yeah, they're both past, but the thing is that in English, the past simple subjunctive is a hypothetical present, and the past perfect subjunctive.
The hypothetical present is be. I think you were going to talk about the third subjunctive. I'm sorry I derailed this, but were you going to start talking about be, like be it, and stuff like that for your third subjunctive?
Oh no, we're not talking about the present subjunctive today.
Well, that's the present.
Yeah, be would be the present subjunctive.
And were here last night is the preterite subjunctive, and had he been here is the pluperfect subjunctive. They align perfectly with the indicatives.
Yeah, the were is the past simple and had been is the pluperfect subjunctive. Yes.
As you said, in British English, if like saying was as the subjunctive is quite common, so this sentence here would be used and understood by people in Britain, but I see you're trying to teach strictly the subjunctive forms like you expect in America, in which case I suggest that person B is actually saying an ungrammatical sentence.
I'm sorry, you're asking. Sorry, someone just called me. You're asking what again?
Person B is saying an ungrammatical sentence.
Oh, no. No, it's not ungrammatical.
I'm afraid it is, because you've got was in the indicative and would have in the subjunctive.
No, you can actually do that because here we're talking. Here it's an indicative in a conditional. So you can have indicatives and conditionals. It's not
Conditionals are
common.
inherently subjunctive.
Yes, but not always. And that's the key thing here.
Would is the subjunctive of will in this situation, which means that was also has to be conjugated into the subjunctive.
Not always.
You could say, were he here last night? That's a grammatical sentence, which shows that it should be if he were, because if you couldn't do that, then you wouldn't be able to invert it and it still makes sense. It would sound wrong, but it sounds right. Do you know what I mean?
No, I know. Yeah, I know what you mean, but that would still technically be wrong because only the pluperfect subjunctive is for past hypotheticals.
Hi. If he was here last night is an indicative sentence opening, but then in order to keep it in the indicative and make it grammatical, you have to then follow it with something indicative. So, like, if he was here last night, then we would see glass on the floor or something like that. It has to be in the indicative.
No, because in that case, would is not really it's just a conditional.
I'm going to stop talking now because you need to get on with your lesson. But I think after this, if you come back to it in an hour and you look at it for a long time, you might notice what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
I'm not putting role or anything. Like, I'm an amateur linguist, so I study like moods and stuff all the time. So I'm very sure about this.
Oh, okay, I see
I
what
just
you
wanted
mean.
to let you know.
Okay.
I will now stop talking.
Okay. So regarding what I was saying earlier, so going back to the third conditional, let me go back to my outline, hold on. Okay. So going back to the third conditional and the second conditional, can you guys think of some examples of both? And make sure you label the sentence too. So like say second conditional or simply a number 2 and then type up your example. So you could do that or you could just say it out loud, whichever one. And I think some people have already provided some examples. Let's see. Oh, you want me to repeat the question? Okay, well, I was just asking you guys to provide examples of second and third conditionals in the chat. Okay, so what was I going to... Okay, so let me go ahead and mention something else. Oh wait, no, someone posted an example. Number 3. If you had been there, you would have seen what he did. Yeah, that's a third example. That's a third conditional, so that works. They would have found the key if they had looked for it. Yeah, that's also a good one. Number 2. If I were rich, I would buy a car. Yes, that's a second conditional. Let's see. If I had paid attention, I would have known what my homework was. Yeah, that's a good example. Okay, Freddie, alter your sentence a bit and you'd have a perfect sentence. Okay, number 3. If you had talked to me, I would have stopped the children from fighting. Okay, that works. Number 2. If I had come to the battle earlier, I would beat him. It should be if I came... Well, actually, no, that sentence is fine, but that's not a second conditional. That's a mixed conditional, which we'll talk about shortly. If I had played, we would have won the game. That works. That's a third conditional. If I had seen him, I would have told him about you. Okay, that works too. If I had slept, it really should be if I had slept, but I got what you mean. If I had slept, I would have some strength. If I were that smart, my marks would be higher. That's a second conditional, yes. Okay, if I had been there, it would be a different story. That's neither second nor third. That's a mixed conditional. Number 2, if my dad wasn't God, I would have... It really should be I would have had, unless you're currently a child, then this could work, but it really should be if my dad wasn't or weren't gone, I would have had a better childhood. That would be mixed conditional, not number 2. And I'll talk about mixed conditionals in a moment. Okay, so I guess that's enough examples for now. Now let's talk about mixed conditionals. Oh, number 3, if you had saved your money, you could have bought a guitar. That's a good one. And I forgot to mention that in second and third conditionals, you could also use might and could in place of would. So someone here said you could have bought a guitar. You could say that instead of would or might. Like you could use those 3, but they would mean slightly different things though, so keep that in mind. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and talk about... Okay, I talked about inversion and then the past perfect, indicative, and subjunctives. So now let's go ahead. So I'm going to mention Spanish in a moment, and you'll see why. So in Spanish, you actually have a very similar set of conditionals with regard to English. So let's talk about, let me post the example I have for the zero conditional in Spanish, and then post an English translation. So regarding the zero conditional, in Spanish, here's this sentence. In English, here's this sentence. If you heat water, it boils. Let me find that. It boils. So again, this conditional refers to things that are always true. So you can see that in Spanish and English, the system of conditionals is very similar. So in Spanish, it would be this sentence, and in English, it would be that sentence. And for the first conditional, here's another example. So I'm going over the 0 and 4 like 0 to 3, the conditional 0 to 3 like really fast. So in the first conditional, in Spanish, the sentence would be this, and in English, the sentence would be this. Like a fact that never changes. Yeah, exactly. If it rains tomorrow, this conditional refers to things that are very likely to happen. So again, this is an example of the first conditional. So in Spanish, you'd say this, and in English, you'd say this. And this conditional refers to things that are very likely to happen. And I'm mentioning Spanish because for Spanish speakers, I'm making this easier for them because their system of conditionals is very similar to the system of conditionals in English. So if you're a Spanish speaker, you don't really need to learn much because all you just have to do is learn the forms. It's the same set. So kind of like how I mentioned in my lesson about pronoun cases, the differences between English and German to help German speakers understand how English pronoun cases work because it's largely the same concept. Okay, so for the second conditional, so the second conditional, in Spanish you'd have this. In English, you'd have this. And again, the second conditional, this conditional refers to hypothetical things in the present. In the present. Yeah, that's correct. This conditional refers to hypothetical things in the present. So in Spanish, you would have this sentence, and in English, you would have this sentence. And notice how, oh, well, let me mention that in a bit later. Okay, but yeah, this conditional refers to hypothetical things in the present. So you can see the similarities here. Like, syntactically, these sentences are the same. And for the third conditional, you would have this sentence, and for Spanish and English, you would have, oops, this conditional refers to hypothetical. Okay, so for the third conditional, in Spanish, you'd have that sentence, and in English, you'd have this sentence. And this conditional refers to hypothetical situations in the past. So this is the third conditional. So as you can see, in Spanish and English, they're very similar systems. The only difference is that in Spanish, the past subjunctives are completely separate from the past indicatives, as you can see in these sentences. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So in English, we only have one distinct past subjunctive word, but in Spanish, you have every past indicative has a past subjunctive counterpart. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. But other than that, it's really the same system. So that's just a review of all the conditionals. Okay, so now we are going to talk about mixed conditionals. So mixed conditionals are interesting because they're essentially a combination of the second conditional and the third conditional. So if you take one clause from one and then if you take the condition clause from one and mix it with the result clause of the other, you get a mixed conditional. So let's talk about the first one regarding the present condition. Okay, so let's take the if clause from the second conditional. Once we do that, we get this. If past simple subjunctive, then conditional perfect. That's the form for the mixed conditional, the first mixed conditional. So if past simple subjunctive, then conditional perfect. Okay, so what this does, the first mixed conditional one.
What this does?
Huh?
Is it?
Okay, so mixed conditional one is the, I'm trying to remember. Okay, so it's a past result of a present condition. A past result of a present condition. Or in other words, present condition, past result. So you have two different time frames at play here. One clause pertains to one time frame, one clause pertains to another time frame. So for example, if I didn't have to go to school today, I would have stayed home this morning. So that's an example of the mixed conditional one. If I didn't have to go to school today, present condition, I would have stayed home this morning, past result. And let's see, didn't have in this case is the negative past simple subjunctive, and would have stayed is the conditional perfect. And as Clinton just provided another example. If I were you, I would have been here. So that's an example. Okay, another example would be if I weren't so lazy, I would have done better on my exams. If you're talking about exams that you took in the past. And as Moon provided a good example. If I didn't have to work so much, present condition, I would have gone to the party last night, past result. So it's the same thing. And in my example, if I weren't so lazy, present condition, I would have done better on my exams, past result. Okay, so yeah.
Do you know your grandma calling you?
I did. I told her I already know. Just wait.
She shouldn't have to call you so many times.
She can fucking wait.
Don't ask her to make you food. Because she's over here yelling at me. Ask you where you are. You're here just on your laptop.
I don't care.
Just don't ask her to make you food.
Whatever. Go away. Sorry about that. Anyway. Okay, so as Okay. How long have I been doing this? Okay, an hour. All right. Okay, so that's one example. Those are some examples of the present conditional. I'm sorry, no, the mixed conditional one. I wouldn't say if you weren't been there, I would be alive. That's not grammatically correct, because you can't put weren't and been together like that. If he didn't scream at me, this lesson would not have been intruded. That can work if you mean to say that he habitually screamed at you. But if you're saying that he screamed at you in the past, then you'd have to say if he hadn't screamed at you. But if what you wrote is what you meant, then that's fine. Okay, so now the second one. Sorry. Mixed conditional 2. If I were a girl, I wouldn't have kissed you. I mean, that could work. Okay, mixed conditional 2. Takes the form of, it's like the other way around. So, if past perfect subjunctive, then conditional simple. And you might see some grammar sources list these as mixed conditionals 1 and 2, but the other way around. But it really doesn't matter. I just picked an arbitrary number for these conditionals. Okay, so that's the form for the mixed conditional 2. So here you have a past. It's similar to the third conditional, yeah, but it's not the same. So here you have with mixed 2, you have a past condition, a present result of a past condition. Sorry, present result of a past condition. Okay, mixed 2 is just a present result of a past condition. So, for example, the lesson will end soon, don't worry. I did have some exercises, but I don't think I'm going to have time to do that. And it'll take a while to do anyway. So I'm just going to explain the conditionals and be done with that. Anyway, so with mixed conditional 2, one example would be if you had worked harder in school, you would have a better job now. So had worked is the past perfect subjunctive, and would have is the conditional simple. So here we have a past condition with the present result. If you had worked harder in school, past condition, you would have a better job now, present result. So that's the mixed conditional number 2. Another example would be if it hadn't been for your help, I would not be a graduate. Say someone had been helping you in school. So you could say, if it hadn't been for your help, I would not be a graduate. I would not currently be a graduate. So you have a past condition with the present result.
I have a question.
Yeah?
Shouldn't it be I wouldn't have been a graduate?
Well, no, because you're a graduate now. So, I mean, you could say that, but here I'm talking about a present condition. So, I mean, a present result. So, I'm a graduate now. So, I would use the conditional simple.
Oh yeah, I get it.
Okay. So, that's an example. Mixed 2, no, mixed 2 is not the same as a third conditional. So, here, remember, mixed 1 has past, wait, let me do this. Second conditional has past simple subjunctive with conditional simple. Third has past perfect subjunctive or pluperfect subjunctive with conditional perfect. Mixed 1 is past simple subjunctive with conditional perfect. And mixed 2 is past perfect subjunctive with conditional simple. So you can see that they're all not the same. They all mean slightly different things. So you can see that you have 4 combinations. You can combine one with the other. So second is past simple subjunctive and conditional simple. Third is past perfect subjunctive and conditional perfect. Mixed 1 is past simple subjunctive and conditional perfect. And mixed 2 is past perfect subjunctive and conditional simple. Okay, I already covered that and covered that. And one thing someone mentioned that I forgot to mention, regarding the use of if I were rich. Let's say we have if I were rich. You could technically invert that and say were I rich. But with were, this is the only past simple subjunctive verb that can be inverted. So you could say were I rich instead of if I were rich. So that works too. It's not just the past perfect subjunctive that can be inverted. Were can be inverted too. Or you could say if I were to leave now could be were I to leave now. Or if you want to put it in a continuous aspect, if he were trying harder to do, you could say were he trying harder. You could do that. So with were as a main verb and as an auxiliary verb, you could do some fancy inversion. Okay, but with all other past simple subjunctive verbs, you can't do that. So you can't say if I worked today. You can't say worked I today. You can't do that. But with were, you can do this. Okay, so what was I going to? Sorry, it's just that I've had so many interruptions that my mind is just all over the place. I already covered that one, and I covered that one. Okay, so I think that's... Okay, so we're almost done here. I'm not going to bother with the exercises. I'm not going to bother with them today. Okay, so let me cover 2 non-standard usages that are important to cover, because you'll notice that a lot of natives do these things, and you want to avoid these mistakes in formal writing. So let's talk about non-standard usage number 1. Use of the past simple subjunctive instead of the past perfect subjunctive. So let me provide an example. So here we have a sentence, right? Let me actually boldface this part. We have a conditional sentence here. We would have been in trouble if you didn't help us. Now, this sentence isn't wrong, but only if you're referring to the fact that somebody habitually helps you in the present. But if you mean to refer to the past, like somebody helped you in the past, you can't say didn't help. It has to be we would have been in trouble if you hadn't helped us. So it should be this form. So this is really the more precise form, provided that you're talking about a past hypothetical situation. If you're not, then the previous sentence is fine. So you'll notice that a lot of natives, they do mix these two up. So when they say the past simple subjunctive, they really should be using the past perfect subjunctive. And another example would be, if it wasn't for you, this would never have happened. So here we have wasn't. But again, if you're referring to a past situation, you have to use the pluperfect subjunctive. So if it hadn't been for you, this would never have happened. So it should be this one. Again, a more precise form if this is what you actually mean to say. So be on the lookout for usages like this. Now, if you mess this up, like if you mix the two up, like if you mix a past simple subjunctive with the past perfect subjunctive, if you mix those up, people will still understand you, provided that there's enough context, but you might sound a bit clumsy to some. And in formal writing, you definitely don't want to mix these two up. But in casual English, it's not a big deal. So that's non-standard usage number 1. Now, non-standard usage number 2 is this. Use of the conditional perfect instead of the past perfect subjunctive. Oh, and regarding the second sentence, I should say if it wasn't or words. So people could say wasn't or weren't, but both would, again, not be correct in that instance, if you mean to refer to a past situation. So, but anyway, non-standard usage number 2. Use of the conditional perfect instead of the past perfect subjunctive. So one example you might hear from natives is like, so you might have a sentence like this. If you would have been here sooner, we wouldn't have been late. This is not standard English. You can't use would have in if clauses. You just can't. It's not standard English. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but it's not standard. And by standard, I mean it's the most widely accepted form of English. So I'm not saying that you can't say it, but that it's not allowed in standard English. So standard English would say, if you had been here sooner,
Hello.
we wouldn't have been late. Hello?
Hello. Are you speaking English?
Yes, I'm the teacher of this lesson.
Okay, I will turn off the mute. Okay, yeah.
It's fine. Like, I'll just keep going. It's not a big deal. Okay, so the standard form should be this. If you had been here sooner, we wouldn't have been late. So this is the standard form. So you'll notice that some people do say if you would have, or if someone would have, or stuff like that. No, it has to be the pluperfect subjunctive.
Niche.
Huh? Okay, well, but anyway. But you do hear natives saying things like that. My mom sometimes says it, but this is
Good
not
work.
standard English. Okay, who keeps talking? Okay, So that's non-standard usage number 2 that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so I think that's all I can talk about today. And I really don't want to make this lesson any longer than it is. So I think I covered everything I want to talk about. Oh, you can't hear me? But it says my mic is working.
I
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay.
It is working, bro. It is.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's all I want to say. Yeah, the problem might be in your phone. Sorry that this lesson was not perfect, like just multiple interruptions. But, I managed to talk about everything I wanted to talk about.
Talk about phrasal verbs.
I'll talk about that, but after this lesson. I have to continue finish this lesson first. But if you want an explanation for that, just DM me, direct message me, and then I'll explain it to you. Okay. Yeah, that's really all I have to say here. So I had to end this lesson a bit early, but that's okay because I explained all the basic concepts you should know. So to summarize, we have zero conditionals, first conditionals, second conditionals, third conditionals, mixed conditional 1, and mixed conditional 2. So, and for somebody earlier asked if I could put all these in a Google Doc, like just for those who want to see an overview of the conditionals and some examples, I'll do that. I'll do that later today. Like, just remind me, DM me if you want, and I'll just do it. And the exercises, I could send the exercises here. Actually, yeah, that's a good idea. Like, instead of just going through these one at a time with you guys, I'll just post, I'll actually make a Google Doc later, and then post the exercises on it, and then you guys can just go through them and then show me your results. Or whatever, however you want to do it. Or you could just do them on your own time. You don't have to send the results to me. It doesn't matter. But I'll post the exercises in a moment. But anyway, that is the end of that lesson. And regarding the
Thank you
guy
so
who...
much.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. And regarding the guy who was trying to debate with me about, like, usage of the subjunctives, like with would and all that stuff. He wasn't trying to be rude. I just want to point out something. He wasn't trying to be rude. He was just, he was a linguist, so he was trying to explain to me, like, how he learned all this stuff. So so he wasn't trying to be rude. He was trying to actually help. Because
Okay.
because in English, sometimes the terms vary and usages can vary. So that's kind of why you get debates like this where people argue about stuff like that. But anyway, it's all right. It's not a big deal. That was probably the only interruption that wasn't annoying. Anyway, but that's the end of the lesson. So hopefully you all learned something from this, and I'll post the exercises in a bit. If you don't have any more questions, you are all free to leave. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, teacher.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. This
You're
was
welcome.
really useful.
Why here is so many people?
Because we try to.
Usually this class is about like this hour.